Okay, you're all set.
Okay, I call the February 27th, 2023 meeting of the Southborough Personnel Board to order at 10:31 a.m. Nice to see everyone. First order of business is approval of minutes. We have 3 sets of minutes in the packets. Any changes, corrections, or amendments to any of the minutes?
No.
Okay, I would
Sorry.
entertain a motion to approve the minutes for January 12th, February 7th, and February 10th.
So moved.
Hang on, Barry. Sorry, I couldn't get off mute quick enough.
Okay,
I do have 2 minor comments.
okay,
The first was on January 12th, 2023.
Yeah.
Under SAP revisions, it starts with Mr. Malinowski proposed an implementation plan based on the grid included in the packet with a 4% increase. I would just like, if everyone's okay with it, to add a sentence before that reads, Mr. Malinowski explained that he had analyzed a potential system starting with a 3% as well as a grid implementation. But there was no easy and fair way to do all at the same time and then lead into that, because I think that was the whole point of that discussion in that meeting, was we were trying to see if we could try to land with our 4% and get on the grid, which I think we realized we couldn't do. So I think that was an important lead in, if everyone's comfortable with that.
Yep.
okay, so we need to get the exact language for that. So why don't you restate what you would like it to say?
I would just start a new sentence before the first sentence in that paragraph, just saying, Mr. Malinowski walked through the potential implementation using a 3% across the board.
I'm trying to write as you're speaking, because
Well,
unless
we'll have the recording
Katie,
that
are
we-
you going to be able to go back and do this?
Yep, I've got it. Or Jason, feel free to email it to me if you have it, or.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm fine with what I had originally proposed, but if everyone needs me to repeat it, let me know.
Okay,
I have it.
okay,
If anybody cares.
okay. Anything else in those minutes?
Nothing from me. Then my other one, and this is just more for completeness, Barry, is I couldn't see because I was on the Zoom. But on February 7th, you basically had done almost all your presentation, and then I think John maybe came in, which then caused us to have a quorum. So we should just denote that you had started a presentation, but no quorum was present prior to the 7:47, and then just leave it exactly as we have it. So just adding a sentence along those lines, just in case anyone looks back, because I feel like the substance was actually not in the minutes, but it shouldn't be in the minutes because we didn't have a quorum present.
Yeah, okay,
And I had nothing.
all right. Okay, with those 2 changes, I will move that the minutes for the 3 meetings in the packets be approved. So second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor, Mr. Thorburn,
Aye.
Mr. Malinowski,
Aye.
Ms. Jasinski,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye. The minutes are approved. Moving on to SAP revisions. Let's jump to vacation. Jason, I know that you were waiting to hear back from Kate, and as far as I'm aware, you didn't.
Unless Mark heard, I got one clarifying question from Alex and Kate last week, but it really wasn't substantive. So unless Mark has any other updates, I did not hear back from Labor Council.
Yeah, I don't. I was actually checked my emails again this morning, and other than the comments, I've not seen anything new.
Okay. So effectively, I think that means we are not going to make the changes that we have been talking about for this town meeting.
Why do you say that?
Well, I don't know that I'd be comfortable doing it without Kate's sign off. And well, that's my reason for saying that. I have other reasons I can go into, but that would be the reason I would say it at this point.
I wholeheartedly agree we need Kate to sign off. But let me propose maybe I think if we can all agree on the final framework, which I'm happy to walk through step by step, because I think we agreed on most things last meeting, and I've done some reflection, especially based on some of the public comment we got from some of the employees. We have Kate effectuate that legally in however it's written into the bylaw. The bylaw gets distributed to the personnel board once Kate looks at it, because my understanding is she is back from vacation now. They're going to have any objections to how she's worded it, depending on where we land from the substance. We can have another quick meeting, but obviously if there are significant objections, then then I would pull it, Barry. But we're at the goal line. We have a step that I think we absolutely have to take with Labor Council, but I think just because someone was on vacation last week and we didn't get it by 10:30 this morning, doesn't mean that we should just pull the plug yet. I think you have another week.
Okay. All right. Let me go through then. I can't support the proposal as I see it. And let me run through the reasons why. And first of all, let me say, Jason, you've done an unbelievable amount of work on this. And I think we all should acknowledge the time and energy you put in. I know, Dorian, you were involved as well, but Jason has really gone above and beyond in trying to make this work, along with members of the working group. And I certainly appreciate all of that. Let me just go back and start with where this all started, which was, I guess, maybe 3 years ago when, Jason, you came before the personnel board as a member of advisory and asked us to take a look at vacation benefits and sick leave, and showed us what the potential costs to the town were. And I don't have the exact figures, but I remember it was 6 figures for both items. So let me start by talking about sick leave and what we did on sick leave, which I wholeheartedly support. What we did had no impact whatsoever on that figure that we saw, in terms of it didn't reduce in any way the liability that the town faces on sick leave for current employees. And that's the figure that we saw. So we didn't impact that, but we changed it in a way that will impact, save the town money, I don't know, 15, 20, 25 years going out. It will do that. And so I was supportive of that. Moving to vacation, and let's start with the schedule. And you will recall that I was against changing the schedule because I saw no evidence of a need to do that. And I thought we're in alignment with all the comparable towns. But after some tweaks, and I'm trying to go along here and see what we can get done, I agreed to the modification that was put forward. Well, let's get to the other parts of this. And I'm reflecting on the discussions we had about the salary grid and how we didn't want to implement the salary grid in mid-fiscal year because we wanted to keep it simple. And then I look at what we're doing here, and we're going to have some employees on an anniversary date, some employees on a fiscal year. Some employees can have negative balances, other employees can't. Some can carry up to 1 year's vacation, others can carry 2 weeks. It just very, very complicated. And while it does save some money, it also adds some costs, because if you're front loading vacation, you're going to get people who time their departure to maximize the payout. But the last sort of straw for me was Schedule F. And I appreciate trying to make this work, but the reason for doing Schedule F is because if you try to do it in the body of the SAP, it's a mess. But the schedules are not meant for that sort of thing. The schedules are to lay out what people get paid under certain circumstances. You can't just stick something at the end there because it looks cleaner. It's just not the way to go about, in my mind, changing the SAP. What I would support, and I think consistent with what we did with the SAP, is just put a line in one sentence saying employees hired on or after July 1, 2023 may only carry over 2 weeks vacation, period. It's the exact same thing we did for sick leave. It doesn't touch the exposure that the town has for existing employees, but it cuts it off for out in the future. Exactly the same thing. It's simple. It's easy to explain, just saying to the town, look, we've cut off the liability, period. Without jumping through all of these hoops, which I'm not sure why any of them are necessary. So for all of those reasons, I can't support this approach, but I could support, as I said, doing the same thing for vacation as we're doing for sick leave. So I'll stop there.
So a few things, Barry, is one, yes, it started 3 years ago with an exposure, but obviously I look at this as a personnel board member now, right? I don't look at it. Financial lens has always been something we've tried to keep in mind, but I stopped counting how many employees have reached out to me individually and collectively, and I'm going well beyond the working group. And I take that incredibly seriously. And I think there's something that I didn't expect going into this process that really has, I agree, it's complicated. It's far more complicated than I want it to be. And I think I like your general premise of limiting carryover prospectively. I think we can work something in there. But I think that simplistic view would fall short of trying to help attract talent to the town for open positions, and also help with the maintaining our current talent within the organization that we're going to see under the proposed policy an increase in their vacation accrual. And I'm talking about really employees that have less than 10 years of service to the town of Southborough. I think we heard in the last meeting that there were, this has been a concern pretty early on for me, of some employees get the 3 weeks because their appointing authority or they knew to advocate for it came to the personnel board. Others did not, but they definitely had experience, and we're not going to go through individual details. So if you want to go that approach to start something new, albeit a little late in this cycle, I'm willing to entertain it, but I would offer a few friendly amendments that I still think I would hope we could get behind, that will A, simplify this, but B, help with the maintaining the morale of our current employees, but also helping Mr. Purple, who I think, at least in personal one-on-one conversations, has been a steadfast supporter of where I've been going with this. And I've been talking to him at each step along the way. And ultimately, we have charged him, ultimately through the select board as the personnel director, to go out and hire talent, right? And I'm trying to give him some tools in his toolbox to do that. And I think vacation in every employee survey I see, both in the private and public sector, is one of the easiest ways to attract talent these days, and can be the single defining item, not pay, but actually how much time am I going to have away to deal with what's important for me outside of the workplace. So if you're open to that sort of discussion, Barry, I think we can get there, but it would involve some adjustments to the accrual schedule.
Yeah, I'll let Mark speak on this and his feelings about doing what's being proposed, and just generally doing things about vacation in time for this annual meeting. So, Mark, do you want to chime in?
Do I have a choice?
No.
No, I look, I do appreciate the things that Personnel Board is doing here. I'm not sure that Personnel Board as a whole, some of you have been here longer than others, but appreciate what a big step forward all of this is that you're trying to do this year. This is, it's a big thing. Now, for those of you that are involved in this, and have been, throughout this process, it seems probably more straightforward than it will be to people that are sitting in the seats at town meeting, and trying to understand what's being done here. The word that I've heard both Jason and Barry use this morning, though, is the same word, and it's complexity. And I think that in a town meeting setting, something that is too complex or something that people don't understand can be a problem for an article. And most times people don't want to, when you get in a town meeting, if there's an issue with an article, and we've seen it happen actually with the personnel bylaw 3 or 4 years ago, that there were some things in there that there were some questions and some concerns. It started to snowball, and the next thing you know, we're just going to indefinitely postpone for the year because it's not ready. So we essentially ended up with the same bylaw for 2 years. I would hate to see something happen that, if there's this issue with the board on this, I would hate to see that somebody picks that issue and decides to make it an issue at town meeting, which jeopardizes a lot of the other things in the bylaw. I firmly agree that I will take any tools that you want to put in my toolbox in this hiring environment. So any ability for us to do things, and Jason and I have talked offline, and if there is a way forward that I think that everybody can get behind, I'm all for it, because it's going to make things, easier in what is becoming a more difficult hiring situation for any position right now. I mean, we've got DPW superintendent that we're looking for. We've got building commissioner we're looking for. These are big positions, but I'm as concerned about any admin positions that I'd have to fill as well. It's not easy. So again, those are my concerns, Mr. Chairman, about the bylaw. It's the complexity piece. And the one other thing I'll throw onto the fire, since you didn't ask me, is that you do have in the bylaw, and you've had in the bylaw for a while, the ability to promulgate rules and regulations outside of the bylaw. And this may be, I'm not sure this is where you want to start, because you need to give yourself the framework in the bylaw, but for the personnel board to promulgate the rules and regulations and the specificity of what it is that you want to do, identify the issue within the bylaw, but allow the board to be able to do it outside, because again, some of these things can't wait, 10, 12 months for us to change them. So this may not be the issue, but again, I'll make a pitch that that's something that this board should maybe try to work towards in the next couple of years.
And Mark, if it were up to me, I would take this entire, at least the vacation part of section 11 out and put it in a policy administered by the personnel board, because I think, I don't want to say 100%, but 95% of the review I did with Dorian last year at this time was looking at other towns' policies, not looking at full SAPs.
Right. Yeah, like I said, I mean, I think that's a bridge too far for this
Thank you.
meeting. Like I said, sometimes you go into town meeting and you're just changing a few words and everything and that. You're eliminating schedules. You're implementing pieces from a paying class study. I mean, this is more than most people. And again, you don't know what town meeting is going to be interested in, but if the consent list goes the way that I think the moderator is thinking it might, this is going to be the first substantive article to be discussed. This is going to set the path for the day. No pressure, but I think it's something to think about. But I agree we need to do something. The question is what, and what makes sense given where we are now. And I will also say that we've really pushed the date as late as we could with regard to signing the final warrant and getting it to the printer. So we don't have a whole lot of wiggle room. Council still needs to give a final look over the articles. So it's, we're tight on time.
I have a
Okay.
proposed path forward to simplify this, if anyone wants to hear it.
Always open.
Okay, so Barry, I like your language of employees hired on or after July 1 of 2023 are only allowed to carry 2 weeks into a subsequent fiscal year. So does anyone have any issues with that? I would like to propose, and I'll put in a motion once I kind of see where we're at, that we do adjust the accrual schedule though. And the way I would propose adjusting it would be and you can see this on page 25 of the packet, is that employees with 0 to 2 years of experience have 2 weeks, and then from 2 to 10 have 3 weeks, and then keep the schedule exactly as is moving forward. And that is actually consistent with some of the towns that I have looked at. And it also addresses the issue that was raised by multiple employees at the last personnel board meeting that felt like they probably should have had 3 weeks. They'll actually be at 2 years worth of service to the town of Southborough. So it makes it a moot point in terms of that we won't have to go back and start reviewing CVs and all these other things and start saying this person would have qualified, this one. It would make it nice and clean, but it also would be a nice incentive for retention early on in someone's tenure of service to the town of Southborough.
Jason, can you just restate the changes on page 25 for me, if you wouldn't mind, please?
Yep, literally changing under the chart where it says years of employment.
Yep.
It currently says 0 to 5 years gets 2 weeks. Just change that to be 0 to 2.
Okay.
And then the next line would start with a 2 instead of a 5.
Okay.
And everything else would be exactly the same.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Again, as I said, I'm not sold on the need to do it, but in the spirit of trying to get something done, I'm not going to object to doing that.
Okay. And then I think what we need to then discuss is, and you can see where I was starting, if we all move forward with that, I think we then need to discuss what I have currently on what's on page 38 of the packet. And it's under bullet point 2. And this is really, do we amend the existing section 11 to add the following sentences? Employees that receive 3 weeks of vacation on their date of hire prior to, basically, I got to reword this a little bit now based on where we're headed, but employees that receive 3 weeks of vacation on their date of hire shall be treated as having 5 years of service on the date of their hire and therefore will move to 4 weeks of vacation after 2 years of service to the town of Southborough and subsequently to 5 weeks of vacation after 10 years of service to the town of Southborough. So the reason that was in there was the framework we all voted in favor of last meeting was we were going to then move people at 7 years of service to 4 weeks time. My question to all of you is, do we want to go that far or not? Because I think there was an expectation in the room, based on at least the vote we took at the last meeting, that our chart within section 11 would adjust at 7 years, not at 10 years. But the reason I went to this statement first is that this then becomes an interplay between those that already got the 3 weeks when they started, because it then becomes a management, like how do you map them, et cetera. So the question is, do we want to go that far or not?
And again, the rationale for doing it is because there are some employees who would have qualified. Now, when you say would have qualified, well, I guess you're talking about under the current policy, not the old policy, but the current policy, that similar employment counted, not just government, municipal employment, but so people who would have qualified for that, but for whatever reason, they never sought, approval was never sought on their behalf to get the 3 weeks. Is that what you're trying to solve here?
So let me take a step back. I think we have solved those individuals' concerns with the framework we already all agreed to. By going 0 to 2, there's 14 employees that currently have 2 weeks of vacation time. 12 of the 14 would move to 3 weeks of vacation time if this got approved at town meeting within the next fiscal year. So I think that solves, a good part of that concern. I think what's on the table now is the chart we agreed to at the last meeting, which was going to be for this, I'll call it futuristic looking system, is we were going to move all employees to 4 weeks of vacation time after 7 years of service.
Right.
The question is, do we want to do that, or do we want to just cut the discussion off on section 11? If we do it, there is a corresponding impact to our employees that we hired with 3 weeks. And you just have to define when it's 4 weeks. I personally am in favor of, after 7 years of service to the town of Southborough, that they move to a new accrual system. So, i.e., we would be changing what currently says 10 to 7 on the second row of the chart and the third row of the chart.
Right, I get that. What I'm, and this is just me. It's just I'm trying to figure out what we're trying to deal with. Okay. So 11B2 now requires those who are given 3 weeks to serve for 5 years before they can get to 4 weeks.
Correct.
And if we're changing the accrual schedule, we need to change that language.
Exactly.
And maybe the best way to understand it is, let's say we hire someone with 3 weeks of similar experience. So they get 3 weeks of vacation. they would be eligible to move to 4 weeks after how many years of service?
5 under the current system.
Okay, right. Clearly 5 under the current system. What about what you're proposing?
I would propose they move after 2 years of service.
Well, but then they only have a total of 5 years, including their prior service, and they're getting better treatment than someone who was hired right out of college.
I lost you for a second there. So
Well,
theoretically, the person that has no professional experience is going to get 2 weeks of vacation for the first 2 years of their service under
Right.
what we just talked about.
right, but they're going to go to 4 weeks. It's going to take them 7 years to get
Correct.
there.
Mm-hmm.
But if you had someone who had 2+ years of experience and you move them up after 2 years, they're making it in the equivalent of 4 years.
Correct, because you're incentivizing prior professional experience.
But you're giving it more credit than credit for working for the town.
Well, I guess let's take a step back. What is the temperature of the board to change to 7 as forget about this 3 week, thing to start. Do we want to move to a 2 to 7 year system still or not? That's what we voted at the last meeting. We just need to, which basically means that after 7 years of service, an employee that started with 2 weeks would be at 4 weeks after 7 years of service. Do we want to do that or not? Because if we don't want to do that, we can stop the discussion. If we do want to do that, then there's a corresponding second piece we got to deal with is the people that start with 3 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, I've spoken. I'll let John and Dorianne provide whatever input they want. Any feelings on it?
I think I would be in favor of the change from at 7 years to go to the more vacation. But I'm not really sure how it's going to impact the other piece either. I really need to understand if we do that, what is the similar change that Jason is speaking about? I don't think we can vote one piece and not have the information on that one.
I will walk through an example if we're
Okay.
trending that way. But I want to make sure we're trending that way because otherwise I'm just going to confuse everyone 200 different times.
John, any thoughts?
Just let me understand. You're proposing, Jason, 0 to 2 years. They start off at 2 weeks.
Correct.
Everybody. You bring somebody in with experience, and you're going to start them off at the 2 to 7 year, which would give them 3 weeks.
Correct.
All right. Are they going to wait till the 7th year before they go up another step?
No, I'm going to give you employee A. Employee A has no prior professional working experience.
Yeah.
Under what we've already talked about, they would start with 0 to 2 weeks.
Yep.
So in their first 2 years, they would get 2 weeks of vacation.
3 weeks. Yep. After 2 years, they get 3 weeks.
Yep. So then starting in year 3 through year X is what I'm going to call it. I'm going to say 7 for now. They would get 3 weeks. From year 7 to 15, they would get 4 weeks. And then 15 plus, they would get 5 weeks.
Okay.
So that's like the employee that has no prior professional experience. I think that's the minority population at this point. I think the folks that Mr. Purple is bringing into, regardless of what classification the position is, seem to have a lot of experience in either municipal or private sector that's attributable to their job. So what I'm proposing here is if the personnel board did grant the appointing authorities request to give the person 3 weeks on their start date because they have prior experience, they would have 3 weeks for their first 2 years. They would then go to 4 weeks starting in year 3. And then they would go to 5 weeks at year 10. Which is exactly what happens now, except for this in terms of the 10 years of experience with the town of Southborough. It's really this year 2 versus year 5.
Well, I'm not the brightest bulb on the street, but if you bring someone in under 0 and start them at 3 weeks, they're gaining a week for the first 2 years, so that they're 2 weeks ahead to begin with of the
Yeah.
guy that comes in with 0 experience. Okay,
Mhm.
so I personally, off the top, I feel they should wait till year 7 to get the extra week, the 3rd week, the 4th week.
Here's the problem. They only wait till year 5 right now. So we'd be making the system worse, not better in that example.
Well, well, that's because they've had more prior experience to qualify for the 3 weeks.
Exactly.
So it's not apples to apples. They have to wait the 5 years, but they'll. So I don't, I guess, understand why we're just saying 2 years. I don't get the rationale for the 2 years.
You only have to deal with the 2 years if you're going to change the 10 to 7. Because otherwise you're going to deal with it 5 years in. So let's just roll through that example, right? You hire someone with 3 weeks. At year 5, you move them to 4 weeks. That's what would happen right now, right? Under the current system. What are you going to do when they hit year 7? Are you going to move them to 5 weeks, or are you going to make them wait till they get to year 10 to move them to the 5 weeks?
Yeah. I mean, from what I said before, I'm not in favor of any system that gives people sort of an advantage, giving more credit for work for the outside than working for the town. So any system where someone could get to 4 weeks faster using a combination of outside experience and town experience than someone who would work their whole period with the town, I wouldn't be in favor of that.
But isn't that what we have now? I'm just reacting to what we have now.
How are people from the outside moving faster?
They start off with an extra week to begin with when you give them 3 weeks.
Well,
Yeah.
but we're giving them credit for their prior service, but they have to wait a full 5 years to get to 4 weeks, where even if they had 8 years of prior experience, they still have to wait 5 years. Just as employees working for the town have to wait that 5 years. Well, I don't think they get it better now.
So you're proposing, Barry, that if someone gets hired with 3, that they would just still move on the 5-year increments, exactly like we have it now.
Yeah.
But I know you're not necessarily in favor of it in terms of changing the 10 to 7. But if we do change the 10 to the 7, I think we can't, otherwise we'd be inverting the situation. So I think we need to decide whether we're moving to the 7 or not, or just leaving it as is and just dealing with the 0 to 2 year issue.
Okay. Here's what I'm struggling with. We are literally at the 11th hour here, and I just feel like we're trying to figure something out quickly so we can meet a deadline of town meeting. When, clearly none of us have thought through, I won't say, Jason, I think you've thought through a lot of this more than the rest of us have, but we're, I speak for myself, I'm still trying to come to grips how all this would interrelate. And I know it's been a long time in the process, but I think we need to consider either not doing anything on vacation or just making the change that we mentioned before of saying people hired on or after July 1 will get 2 weeks and give ourselves the time to understand what we're doing and figure it out.
Well, let me say this about that, Barry. We've got 4 of us here. I don't know what delaying the decision is gonna do, adding one more person, that's absent today. We talked and talked and talked. We've got to bite the bullet.
I'm done with this issue after this town meeting. Like, I've put way too much time into it, and I've tried to bring forward proposals that try to thread a needle nicely between. I think I understand the town's finances pretty well. I think I understand the employees' issues, and I've spent a lot of time talking to department heads, the town administrator. So I'm fine if we want to simplify it, but I will not be shepherding the process forward after today. It's just too much. And I agree with you, John. We need to make some decisions and stick to them. I think we all can acknowledge that this is a complicated topic because you're never going to appease everyone. And I think obviously there's a split kind of discussion here on where we go, but I've also tried to figure out and listen to every angle we've taken through this process where we may be creating potential issues. So I'm going to make a motion that we accept Barry's suggestion and add language that on or after January 1, employees hired on or after July 1 of 2023 shall only be allowed to carry 2 weeks of vacation to a subsequent fiscal year.
Second.
Well, just a little bit of discussion here on the whole fiscal year thing, because we're throwing in a term there that then is inconsistent with other parts of 11. So aren't we just creating confusion by that?
That was purpose, and I obviously stressed it in my motion. I would like to see us, I'm not ready to make this motion today, have a discussion with the employees of whether we can move, whether there would be concern with changing the word anniversary date in the future to read fiscal, because that's what every other town does. And there's no sort of, I'll call it, red circle sort of clause in anything I saw, but I don't want to arbitrarily move that today. But I think that's a discussion I would be happy to have a discussion with the working group, et cetera, just to see if there's something we're not thinking about there by changing the word anniversary to fiscal for purposes of carryover moving forward. There probably is something we're not thinking about, which is why I'm not moving that today. But I think that is not difficult to implement.
But and that's fine. But by putting, why wouldn't you just deal with everybody at the same time, one way or another? What's the point of? Because what I fear is we will decide, no, we're going to stick with the anniversary date. And then you've got this language for these new hires that says fiscal year. And then we've created confusion that I don't see what the benefit of that is.
But this is, so correct me if I'm wrong, Jason, this is just carryover. This is an accrual.
This is yeah, right. So the accruals would still change on their anniversary, right? So if you
The-
were
Yeah, the only time carryover comes into play is from one fiscal year to another. So I would think the wording, in my opinion, and again, I'm not an attorney, but I think the wording, in my opinion, would be sufficient because we're talking about carryover, which can only happen in between fiscal years.
So is your point that we should have the word fiscal in there or that we don't need it?
I think that the word fiscal is appropriate there. Again, when you're talking about accrual, somebody's anniversary date could fall off of other than a July 1st, but your only date that you can carry over is July 1st from a prior fiscal year. So I think the inclusion of fiscal is appropriate.
Okay, I guess my question is, if that's how it's done, why do we need to? Doesn't matter. I mean, I'm not going to fight over it. It sounds like it doesn't make a difference whether we include the word or don't include it if
Well,
that's the way we do it.
I think so. Mark, I don't know if Brian's around today to confirm this, but my understanding is when Kristen goes in, and you actually can see it in the files that she's submitted to the personnel board for consideration on this topic through time, is she has a, like, what she calls like a review date. So like, let's just say you had a November 1st hire date. She goes in on October 31st, and basically that's their anniversary date, and resets that person to where they need to be if there's a reset that's required. So I do think there's a distinction here, Barry, and I think it's a good question, is I think for today, we just deal with future employees and use the word fiscal year. Then I think we go back and look at the current verbiage, which I think is in section 11B 4 currently. I can't tell with the red line. It's in 3 or 4, where it just says year. It doesn't actually say anniversary or fiscal. Let's deal with that after this town meeting. Let's get feedback. We can go to the working group. We can get Kristen and Brian involved. But I do think we need to move forward with the language that you started this meeting with, but use the word fiscal and be very clear about it.
Okay, I mean, again, if based on what Mark said, I don't object to it. I was just fearful we'd have a situation where we have new hires under one system and current employees under a different one in terms of anniversary date versus fiscal year. But if that's not going to be the case, I don't have any objection to use of the word fiscal. Okay, so there is a motion. Any further discussion? Was there a second?
Second,
Okay, any further discussion on that? Okay, Mr. Thorburn,
Aye.
Mr. Malinowski,
Aye.
Ms. Jazinski,
aye.
and the chair votes aye. Okay, John?
Jason, let me understand if this is going to be appropriate. I would want to make a motion that we adopt a chart, vacation chart. 0 to 2 years, 2 weeks, 2 to 7, 3 weeks, 7 to 15, 4 weeks, and 15 or more, 5. Would that be appropriate?
I would vote in favor of that motion if that's what you're moving.
I make that motion.
I'll second it.
So question, is that for no prior experience only, or is that for everybody? Because my understanding was that was for no prior experience.
That's for no prior experience.
Okay,
If we adopt that, then I think we'll have to discuss language of how you deal with the prior experience.
okay.
Okay.
Okay, any further discussion?
No, but Lori Esposito had her hand up, Barry. I wasn't sure if you saw.
Okay.
it or not.
Katie, can you bring her in?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, Laurie, go ahead.
Okay, I think it's probably all, it's not a point at this stage, but unless I misunderstood, Mr. Purple said accrual is only an issue at fiscal year.
which is not the case. What
No,
Jason,
no, it's the opposite, Lori. Accrual happens with
I'm sorry,
anniversary.
yeah, I'm sorry, you're right, carryover. Carryover happens at anniversary month as well. Because we have to make sure, like Jason said, Kristen goes in on everybody's anniversary month and makes sure that there's only the certain amount of carryover that you can have. It doesn't go fiscal year yet, to my knowledge.
Yeah, I think Lori's saying, I think what I already mentioned. So I think,
Right, yeah,
Lori, I think that's something we should talk about with the working group members of whether that does make a difference to all you. And we don't need to talk about it today, but something
Agreed.
we should
Yep.
think about whether we clarify in the future or not.
yep, thank you.
Okay, I mean, I'm not going to go and revisit it, but it does raise the same concern in my mind I already mentioned about the we ending up with two systems, but I don't want to go back at this point. So we have a motion seconded. Any further discussion? No, Mr. Thurborn,
Aye,
Mr. Malinowski,
Aye.
Ms. Jazinski,
Aye.
and the chair will vote aye. So that is approved.
Okay. So now we have to deal with, if someone got hired with 3 weeks, when do they move to 4 weeks? Because the existing bylaw says employees commencing employment with 3 weeks per year will be required to complete 5 years of service before ascending to the next band in the vacation chart. So that means that if we do nothing, that means someone that's hired with 3 weeks would go to 4 weeks after 5 years and 5 weeks after 10 years, which is the current exact system.
Yeah.
I'm fine leaving it as is for today. I would be open to a discussion of whether there is a policy we could put in place down the road to help with retention on that topic, because I think 10 years may 10 years may be too much. I don't know, right? But again, something that I would be interested in talking about, whether there is policy making that we can do beyond that first 5 years, because I think it's silent about the second 5 years.
Hey, Jason, my understanding when we were discussing this, so the proposal for people being hired with experience, we had stated 2 years was 3 weeks vacation.
Mm-hmm.
3 to 10 years, we were going to go to 4 weeks, and then 10 plus year to 5 weeks. So are we changing those numbers, or?
Well, that's the discussion.
Right.
I felt very passionate about changing the numbers that John had in his chart. I do feel comfortable moving someone to 4 weeks of vacation after 2 years of service if they have the requisite experience. I think Barry certainly has outlined some concerns with that. I could go either way if we were to move this, but I think for simplicity today, I would say we leave it exactly as is and think about whether there are rules and regulations that we may want to adopt based on the current recruitments that Mr. Purple's going through, right? That may tell us a little something about what's going on in the marketplace, and would ask him to report back.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
So Barry, the one other thing that I would suggest that we move and add in here is if we're simplifying this approach, the idea of front loading was the term we always used. I agree with your statement you made early on of, obviously, if we had just awarded it on July 1, if you do have a risk, everyone leaves on July 2nd, right? I would like to either get agreement from the 4 of us that are here today that we will adopt a policy that allows employees to go negative within a fiscal year. I'm not going to front load, but just allows employees to go negative within a fiscal year, or put it in the bylaw itself. Because I think we've heard, especially from those that have lower accrual rates, that it's a challenge, right? And I think it would make better, it'll help the employee morale, but it'll also help operationalize some of this, right? Is if there's a better time of the year for an employee to be taking vacation for their department, but they don't have the balance, they don't have the ability to take it right now. And I'd like to give that flexibility because we have approvals in here. Department heads need to get the approvals of their supervisor, you know, right? So I don't know if we do it as a policy or we add it into the bylaw, but I do want to do something on that, on those lines too, because then I think we can put this topic primarily to bed moving forward.
I mean, I generally agree. I think certainly most employers in the private sector operate that way. Because yeah, if you're hired on July 2nd and you want to take an August vacation, it's very difficult. You know, even if you're entitled to 4 weeks vacation, it's still very difficult. So, but I prefer to hold off, and I think we should address that. But again, in the interest of simplicity, I would prefer to hold off and deal with that. And as Jason suggested, we could draft a policy. Again, it can fall within the framework of the handbook we are working on. I think it's appropriate to have it in there once we get that document done. So that would be my preference.
I mean, I think 11B6 clearly says vacation administrative policies and practices shall be prepared and established under the direction of the personnel board. So if everyone, Barry, it sounds like you're in favor of that framework, right?
Yeah.
So why don't we, if everyone agrees that we'll use B6 to do that, I will work with Mr. Purple to draft a policy that we can take up at post-town meeting, and then it can be effective immediately. We don't have to wait for a bylaw to be put in place or anything like that. And I think it will show that we've also listened to that concern.
Jason, are you talking about the corrected SAP, the red line one, or because I have on page 26, that is number 7.
Yeah, well, that will be coming out. So yeah, it's existing 11B6, but you're seeing the 7. It just says that vacation administrative policies and practices shall be prepared and established under the direction of the personnel board.
I just have that as B7, and that was correct to 7 on my copy.
Yeah. So
Okay.
yes. So
All right.
all right.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to make a motion on that point.
John, did you? Go ahead, John.
I make a motion that we stay with the current policy for the employees that are hired with an extra week of vacation to 3 weeks vacation, and we further examine it at a future time.
Is there a second?
Second, and just for clarification, John, you're saying it's going to take them 5 years to get to 4 weeks.
Yep.
10 years to get to
Yep.
5 weeks. But we're going to continue to potentially discuss it.
Yep.
Okay, I'm in favor of that.
All right, any further discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye,
Mr. Thorburn,
aye,
Mr. Malinowski,
Aye.
Mr. Jasinski,
Aye.
chair votes aye. It is approved. Okay. Anything else you want to address, Jason?
No, so procedurally, I think just to make sure we're all on the same page, I will work, Katie, I might need your help just getting some of this off the recording. I'll work to get this in writing, have Kate F. Fedorov look at it, and then we'll circulate it back to the personnel board to make sure that the writing that Kate has signed off on ties to what everyone was expecting, just to make sure we dot our I's and cross our T's. Is that the plan on this?
Yep,
Yes.
that
Okay.
works.
And Mark, can you
Okay.
just let Kate know to kind of stand down on what she may be doing this morning, and we'll get back to her by tomorrow morning with a very simplified version moving forward.
Sure.
Okay, and again, Jason, thank you for all the work you have put in to this. I think you've
Thank you,
you
Jason.
served the town and the employee workforce well. So,
It certainly was a
Okay.
hornet's nest, for sure.
all right. Moving on to the other revisions to the SAP. Although Vanessa's email suggested we approved a lot of them, we didn't actually vote on them at the last meeting. I ran through them to make sure people were okay with them. But you have a clean document which I've gone through and does accurately reflect, with two exceptions, what I believe the changes to the SAP that we have discussed, that I went over, other than the ones we've talked about today. And the only two differences are, I think we've just decided to leave section 11B2 as is. Am I correct about that?
Yes.
I think that's right. So the only other change that I'm aware of is, you recall when we discussed the youth and family services clinician, Jason had suggested that we make it effective sooner than July 1 to allow them to go out and hire someone. But looking back at the minutes, we never actually did that. So if we look at the new Schedule A, what I would propose is, we, next to clinician, we put a double asterisk and say effective March, is it 26th, 2023? Everyone know what I'm talking about?
Which page are you on, Barry?
Let me find it, because I can't print anything where I am, so I have to.
I see
Let's
it.
see.
So on page 30, clinician is about halfway down the page.
Okay, but it's the clinician job grade 5.
Yep.
That we've approved. All I'm suggesting is, because I think it was the spirit of the board that we wanted to allow them to start the hiring process sooner rather than later, because it's ARPA funding. I'm just suggesting we clarify that by two asterisk, and it just, the asterisk saying underneath the schedule effective March 26, 2023.
Okay.
Any discussion about that? Any concerns about that? Okay, I will move that the SAP be amended to add two asterisks after the position of clinician in Schedule A, and under Schedule A, two asterisks to say effective March 26, 2023. Is there a second?
Second,
Okay. All in favor, Mr. Thorburn,
Aye.
Mr. Malinowski,
Aye.
Ms. Jazinski,
aye.
and the chair votes aye. With that, with that change, and the change that 11B2 will appear unchanged, I move that the clean version of the SAP in your packet be included in the warrant as recommended by the Personnel Board.
Okay.
Is there a second?
Second,
Any discussion? Okay, all in favor, Mr. Thorburn,
Aye.
Mr. Malinowski,
Aye.
Ms. Jazinski,
aye.
and the chair votes aye. Thank you for that. Okay. We have at the end of the packet a summary, which may need to be revised. I haven't, yeah, it will have to be revised. And what I would suggest, if it's okay with the board, similar to what Jason is doing, that I will work with Vanessa in updating it, and Vanessa will circulate it to you and make sure everybody's on board, that it accurately reflects the changes. Is that okay with everyone?
Yeah.
Excuse me. Thank you. Any other business with regard to SAP revisions?
Mhm.
Okay, the only other order of business, as we all know, Mark is in the process of looking for a new building commissioner, and I believe they would like to add certain aspects to the job description to help them in that process. Mark, do you want to speak to this?
There was, in your packet, you've got some minor changes that the select board had approved in the job description. I think the most, a lot of it, I think, is belt and suspenders, but on page 42 of what you, and I apologize, I don't have the copy in front of me with the track changes, but on page 42 in your packet, under the special requirements for the position, I think we've, the second bullet, beginning meet or exceed all requirements in accordance with 780 CMR 7. It does talk about the certification for a building commissioner. And again, as we talk about that, our talent pools are not as big as they were. The likelihood is we may be hiring somebody who is not currently a building commissioner, who may simply be an inspector, but has the ability to go through the process within the required time frame to get licensed as a commissioner. So we wanted to make sure that that is understood. It's specified a little bit more by the board. The other
can I just interrupt there, because I was confused by the language there. So
okay,
it says prior to being permanently appointed and within 1 year of employment. Maybe I don't understand the process, but is that saying, it sounds like you're saying we may have to hire someone who doesn't have it prior to being appointed. Or
So you will-
maybe I'm confused by the
so
language.
you will appoint someone who is not currently certified as a building commissioner would be hired as the building commissioner for the town conditionally upon getting their certification as a building commissioner within 1 year of employment. This is very similar to, we hired Hassan as the senior IT specialist, but it was conditional upon within the first 6 months he needed to achieve certain certifications, which he did. So that it's a similar.
But shouldn't it then say prior to being permanently appointed or within 1 year of employment?
I was going to suggest we just strike prior to being permanently appointed and just say within 1 year of employment, because technically no one is permanently appointed. The select board appoints this person every year. So basically you're trying to give yourself an out if this person doesn't go and get the required certification.
Correct.
You basically have in notice to them as part of the advertisement that they got to do this within 1 year, or the select board can move on for that reason or anything else.
Well, I don't think we're looking to extend a probationary period to a year, Jason, though. This would be the only issue that you would extend out to a year. I think everything else would fall within the normal, 6 months probationary period.
So let me just hypothetically though,
Sure.
if let's just say Lori was staying, right? And she gets appointed every year by the select board, correct?
Mhm.
So you can't be permanently appointed. Right? The select board could choose this year to not appoint someone to a position for many different reasons, right? Then it becomes obviously a discussion of why that is, right? But I just think you're saying within 1 year of employment, it's expected this person get it. I don't think you need the prior to being permanently appointed. Because you're not calling them an interim building commissioner, are you?
You're not, but you're appointing them with conditions.
I
So I just kind of think we're splitting hairs here, but I see your point.
Yeah, and again, the word "and" to me doesn't make sense. It's either they had it when they were hired, or they got it within 1 year. It's not and. It's not both.
I agree, Barry. Just one word.
I agree with Jason. It should be within 1 year of employment and to strike the beginning of the sentence.
Or you could say no later than within 1 year of employment, in case someone already does have. I mean, I think we're all on the same page in terms of it, but I don't think the language that's there makes sense.
I think it needs to change, and I'm comfortable with Mark working with Labor Council potentially to just make sure that what you're trying to accomplish is accomplished by the verbiage, but I don't think you can have both things as you currently have it in there.
Yeah,
So how would-
Labor
how-
Council
how would
certainly
the
is
board
not going to
prefer-
approve
how
the
would you
word
prefer to see
permanently.
it?
It looks simple to me, just to strike the word and put or, like you said, Barry.
My proposal is just to strike prior to being permanently appointed, but you seem to think that that's needed for some reason.
I agree with Jason. Prior to being permanently appointed and should be struck from the sentence. It should just read very simply within 1 year of employment.
I'm okay with that.
Sure, okay.
So you'll now need to go back to select board.
I will see whether or not that they feel that that's substantive enough.
That's significant enough.
They want to revote it.
Okay. Any other comments on the job description? Mark, you were going to point out another change when I interrupted you.
I don't dare to now. I'm fine. If you didn't find it, I think we're good. No, there was something else in here that on page 41 in your packet, second paragraph, the last sentence, speaking to the Americans with Disabilities Act and the Architectural Access Board regulations, and that was added in into the job description, just to explain a little bit further, because the Architectural Access Board regulations actually do supersede ADA and everything, and that is more of an interaction that the building commissioner would have. So we want to make sure that was in there.
Okay.
Okay.
Any other comments, Jason?
Yeah, I had one, and Mark, I don't want to slow down your process. So when we make a motion on this, I'd hope the person on board would factor in this commentary. Is I was disappointed to see you just took the last job description and just made those two edits, as opposed to listening to the very blunt, candid feedback Collins Center gave us about our job descriptions. And they even gave us a template for how to do a job description, which it doesn't appear that this now does. So I want you to go out and advertise, get this job, right? Like get this filled. But I would hope that you and or Vanessa could commit to translating this job description into the new template and letting it be a model before the individual that we actually hire is appointed by the select board, whatever your timeline is. Like, I don't think there's a lot to do, but I think we need to start that process now. Obviously, we're gonna have to go back and look at all other ones, but it's an open requisition. We can clearly tell the candidates, the board is changing how we look at job descriptions, but
Mhm.
I would want any motion we make on this to be conditioned upon Mr. Purple coming back in collaboration with the select board and using the Collins Center format for this before that person's appointed.
And I'm happy to do that. I mean, I think that's a larger project because I think they all need to be, but I'm happy to make this the building block. And you know, we can take this and put it into that format and then, you know, begin there.
And then will help us with how to deal with that, you know, right? Because we got to deal with 50 others or however many there are.
Sure.
Great suggestion.
Okay, any other comment? Okay, I will incorporate what Jason just said into a motion to approve the job description with the change that in the special requirements section, the words prior to being permanently appointed and be removed. Is there a second?
Second,
Okay, roll call vote, Mr. Thorburn,
I,
Mr. Malinowski,
Aye.
Ms. Jazinski,
aye.
Mr. Purple. Up, I'm looking.
No, yeah, I'm not falling for that one.
Good test, Barry.
All right, I'll vote for you. The chair votes aye.
That was great, Barry.
You said the time
This
difference doesn't
approved.
affect you. I'm beginning to wonder.
Yeah, I got too many screens going on here.
He's just making sure you're on your toes, Mark.
No, I'll believe me. I'm paying attention.
Okay. Is there any other business to come before the board?
No,
Is there any public comment? Let me know if you see anyone with a hand raised or,
there isn't any.
okay. Board calendar. So as far as I can then tell, we don't have a need. We can actually wait. Well, do we want to meet again before town meeting?
I would say
I'm not-
only if something comes up that we're not aware of, i.e. advisory doesn't vote in favor of the bylaw, select board doesn't vote in favor of the bylaw, or you become aware of something that may impact your presentation at town meeting.
Okay, I'm happy with that. Do we want to look at the week following town meeting?
What's the date, Barry?
So the Monday is the 27th.
I am not here that week. I can only meet via Zoom.
Okay. Are you here the first week in April?
I am not here that week. I can only meet via Zoom.
Okay, well, I
I can
don't
meet on
want to
the
push it
Friday
off.
the 7th. I can meet on Friday the 7th, but I'm gone till the 6th.
Okay,
I cannot meet on the 7th, but I'm available in person or on Zoom the other 2 weeks.
okay, let's shoot for the week of the 27th. John, are you around and available that week?
27th of March?
Yes,
No, I have a doctor's appointment at 10:15 a.m.
well, any other day that week?
All the rest is good.
Okay. I would like, and I know it's been an issue for Michelle, trying to get back to a regular schedule where we meet the same day, same time every month. And when we've had reasons why we've had to deviate from that, but I think that would be helpful. So as a general rule, is one day of the week better for people than others?
Fridays are the easiest for me to plan around.
Friday
but-
is,
Yeah, Monday or Fridays are usually the easiest for me.
okay. Well, let's, all right, let's shoot for March 31st. Do we want to do 9 AM?
That's fine.
Okay. Next meeting will be March 31st at 9 AM.
Okay.
Okay. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second,
Roll call, Mr. Thorburn,
Aye. Aye.
Mr. Malinowski,
aye.
Mr. Zinsky.
Aye.
The chair votes aye. We are adjourned at 11:51. Thank you all
I
very much.
Aye.
Appreciate it.